Be your authentic self. How often have you thought about that? Our battle for embracing our authentic selves up until now has been about just fighting the stories we've been told. And then one day we got surrounded by LLMs, and a polished up version of your work, your thoughts, even your introduction is available at the click of a button. What do you think happens to the battle for authenticity? It just got a lot harder. My guest today is Lynn Perkins. Lynn is the co founder and CEO of UrbanSitter, a leading childcare platform. Lynn's category is one where authenticity matters even more than it does in financial services. So, what happens when a generation of caregivers decide to use AI to rewrite their resumes? As a parent, the person you read about and the person who shows up at your door are two very different people. Authenticity goes down, trust goes down. On this episode, Lynn and I talk about ways to embrace your authenticity even in the age of AI. You'll find that her insights and her advice is relevant in categories way beyond her own. If there is a written document that precedes you, you need to listen to this episode. I've loved getting to know Lynn and the freshness with which she thinks about humans in the age of AI. This is AI-isms, human rhythms in a synthetic world. Lynn, hi. I'm so excited to have you. I know we've been talking about this for a few weeks now, and I'm so excited that you're finally at the conversation. How are you doing today?
I am great, and I'm excited as well. I love that you're covering this area, and I'm excited to have a discussion about it.
Super. Okay, Lynn, most people that talk to you probably talk to you about care. I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And instead of talking directly about care, in the age of AI, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about authenticity and about building trust in relationships. Because, I mean, there isn't a category that trust and authenticity is more important than yours. So I want to talk about authenticity in the context of AI. You ready for this?
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to maybe just think with you on trust, which, we keep saying the word trust all the time, but it's a pretty loaded, packed word. And I think of it as sort of two very clear dimensions of trust. There's a science to it, and then there is an art to it. So maybe we touch on that a little bit. Um, Even before you think too much about what's happening with AI right now, as you think about just trust, the scientific definition of trust, how do you think about that in the context of UrbanSitter?
Well, you've set this up perfectly because at UrbanSitter, we think about it in two dimensions. There's the first piece, which is a little bit more um, objective, where you're looking at trust in terms of, is this person background checked? Do they have the credentials that I'm looking for? Do they meet all of my criteria? And that is like sort of a base level of trust. And then there's more of the art of it, which is really around things like, do we have connections in common? Is there someone that leads me to believe you would be a trusted person to bring into my home? When I read your profile, am I seeing things such as you've worked with multiple families with infants and you really enjoy taking kids to the park? So it's sort of an art and a science, where there's the first piece, which I absolutely have to get over that threshold and understand that you meet some very objective trust criteria that I have.
Sure. Yeah.
But once that's accomplished, the art piece of it means so much more. You might be an incredibly experienced caregiver, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be the right caregiver for my family. And it's a lot of those softer points around connections, values, work ethic, even parenting style, babysitting parenting style, that sort of takes me to the next level of trust.
So I want to tell you on the art side of it, maybe a mini story from my side. I'm a single mom Lynn, and I'm very grateful that I've always had really good humans show up in my life to help me with my kids. Of course, they're much older now, and we don't have a caregiver. But I've had a situation once where the science part of it was done really, really well. It was not on UrbanSitter, another platform. But the art side of it, I really struggled because the um, the individual was not like English was not their first language. Their background was written in perfect English. Their profile was written in perfect English. And when they showed up for the interview, I realized that it was not written by them. And to me, even though they were great, I felt like the disconnect between how the applications was written and how they showed up in person were two very different things. And the art side of trust was a little bit broken. Do you see that at all in what you're seeing in your on your platform, where people try to be like perfect versus authentic?
100%. And one of the ways that we sort of combat that is we have the ability for care providers to do a video, and not all care providers do, it's optional. But what I find is that when I see a video of you and you might be 20 years old and sitting in your dorm room with a poster behind you, but when you're expressing to me how much you care about kids and talking about your experience or what lights you up when you're working with a child, I actually don't care that your English isn't
Yeah.
perfect, but I do care if it doesn't match what you've also written. So I think it's sort of you have to look at the whole package, and I think that trust is eroded when you either, sort of rep and warrant yourself to be somebody or not, or you try to be too perfect. I think that that's sort of a mistake that people often make when they're whether it's for a childcare job or a professional job, you name it. The more authentic you can be all around in every way that you're showing up, I think creates a much more trusted experience for the people meeting you.
And now enter the age of AI, where it is so easy to take anything that you've written or even a video these days that you can pass it through AI and it sounds absolutely perfect. And, we all sound like the same person. But Lynn, I actually think that this point around the art of trust, it applies to your category. But am I right in thinking that it actually applies to so many other categories, right? It could be your Uber driver. It could be a dating site. It could be anywhere where you're meeting another person. But what's written and how they actually show up are two very different things. And it almost feels like, I mean, even job applications, right? Like when I read people's LinkedIn profile, I feel like I can tell that they've used AI. Am I am I extending this concept way too far, or am I right in saying that, trust is eroded if you're not showing up with your authentic self and you're using AI to rewrite who you are and your profile in whichever dimension?
I believe that to be true, and I can give you an example,
Sure.
both an example on the site, but also an example in something I encountered recently. We were approached by a much smaller company about doing some kind of a partnership, and I really like this founder. Um, she reminds me a lot of what we were like when we were in the business 10 years ago,
Oh,
and we just had really great rapport when we met over Zoom. And then shortly after our conversation, I received a proposal from her, which was absolutely well intentioned, and the meat of it was spot on to what we had talked about. But it was so clear that it had been generated by AI, and I actually found it a little bit off-putting because it was too polished,
yeah.
and in some ways actually gave me the impression that she had taken less time with it than if she had done something maybe half as professional but written it herself. And maybe I'm dating myself or aging myself by making that statement, but it lost a little bit of the passion and personality that had come through in our discussion about the
Mm,
partnership.
yep. Yep. Yep.
And then similarly on the, in terms of platforms, whether it's a childcare platform or a dating platform, we're quite close with some of our competitor companies, and we were having a discussion about the use of AI. And one of the competitors was sharing with me that they had started to allow AI to be used, or actually, it was included in the product. You could use AI to modify your profile statement. So
Mhm,
the piece
mhm.
where you describe your skills and
Yep.
what kind of family you want to meet. And what they found is that two things happened. Number one, the care providers all started to sound the same. And
Yep.
then number two, all of us use fraud detection to make our platforms as safe as possible. And what ended up happening is that the fraud detection that looks for content that might reflect a fake profile couldn't actually work because all of a sudden they all sounded fake. So it's
Yeah.
interesting how sort of like and I know, and I kind of love where we're at right now because we are in this exploratory state with
Yeah.
AI where people are trying to use it for different things. And I'm all in favor of that. But
Yeah.
I also appreciate when people try it and it doesn't work and they're very upfront about it.
Can I just go off topic for a second? But I don't speak with a lot of CEOs and that come in and say we're very close with our competitors. And it sounds like there's enough trust even in that relationship and authenticity in that relationship that they would share a mistake they made so that you don't make it. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, we've been in this sort of loose conversation with our competitors for over a decade now, and it really
How?
it really came together because even today, this idea of finding care on the internet is still really young in terms of its possibility to reach a much larger audience. And we've always felt that fraud and any kind of bad actors that might come up on one of our platforms is a risk for all of us.
Mhm,
And we're
mhm.
very careful. We don't share anything that
Trade
you either,
secrets.
couldn't find publicly. We're very careful about what we share,
Yeah.
but we do
Yeah.
share trends that we're seeing around
Yeah.
fraud. And I think it's in all of our best interest. And it's unique. And I don't know if it's because we're still very small compared to the way that people find care otherwise, or if it's also because care, to your point earlier, is really the ultimate in trust. You're bringing someone into your home to
Sure.
watch somebody you love. And I think all of us who are in this category are in it for the mission. And so it's all in our best interest to make it as safe as possible.
Most precious cargo asset, whatever you want to call it, your little ones, no doubt, no doubt. Okay, Lynn, I'm going to actually, at this point in the pod, what we tend to do is we go into some use cases or case studies. And so, what I was thinking of doing is because we started with childcare and trust to do with that, but we expanded the conversation to say authenticity is equal to trust in any and all professions where you have a first written or video content and then it translates into meeting you in person. So maybe I'll throw a few different scenarios and you act as the coach.
Okay,
Yeah. Okay,
sure.
perfect. Let's start with one very close to home. Job applicant. I am not a native English speaker. I am worried that I will make grammatical errors or typos or mistakes in my job application. And I am thinking about just putting it all through AI and just using the AI's spit out response in for my application. Is that the right way forward? Should I go forward?
You should not take it word for word and move forward with it. I think a better use of AI would be in certain parts of your resume, or in certain if you're doing like a cover letter, if there's certain things that you feel like you aren't presenting yourself, you aren't finding the right words. I think using AI to give you some suggestions is a good idea, but I wouldn't let the whole thing override your resume. And in fact, I also, this is like a personal, I guess you could say, bias, but I truly believe that teams that are more diverse do better. And for me, if I were hiring, the fact that you're not a native English speaker and perhaps you've even worked somewhere else before working in the United States, in some ways is a plus to me. So I guess I'm a little biased on that sense. Um, but I think what would happen is then you would, let's say you made it through that first screening. So now you're going to show up at the interview, and to your point earlier about the person who shows up seems different than the person on paper, I actually think that would work against you.
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to you using AI to help you with certain phrases, or to say to AI, "Hey, I did this in my last job, and I'm finding it a tough. I'm finding it tough to make it very concise." That might be a
Concise,
great
yeah.
way for part of it. But I think just putting in all of your experience and expecting AI to give you a resume that that's gonna represent who you are is not correct.
Yep. Because so much of what we read is just the choice of words, the tone, etc., which is very hard for AI to get. So what I'm hearing is human response first, and then instead of taking the whole thing through AI, take specific segments where you're not feeling very comfortable with your language, or you want to make it a little bit more concise, or you're missing a word, just the perfect word for that situation. That's where you use AI.
I
Is
think
that
you
fair?
could also use it, yes. And if you, for instance, if you were, especially if you're newer in your career and you don't have as much to put on your resume, I could also imagine using AI ahead of time and saying to AI, "Hey, I'm applying for this type of job. Here's what I've done in the past. What questions do you have for me about my previous experience that might help with the job I'm looking at?" And having AI work with you to give you more volume for your resume and maybe asking questions you wouldn't have thought of can be really helpful.
Yep.
But again, I wouldn't just expect AI to produce this
The whole
award-winning
thing.
resume.
Got it. Okay. Let's go to the next one. But let's say I'm a sales rep for a SaaS company, and we're a growing company, and we don't have enough salespeople to cover really large regions. I'm the only one. I have a big pitch with a CEO tomorrow. It's the night before. I'm exhausted. I don't have time to sit and do all the research on this particular customer. And so I'm just going to go into ChatGPT, and I'm going to just enter a little bit of the context, and I'm going to have it produce 5 pages, which I'm just going to go pitch. What's your advice, Lynn?
Oh gosh, that one's tough. Let's talk about the fact that you're short on time. I think using AI for the base level of research is great. Um, I would also want AI to pull up some articles for me about the area of the company I'm selling into. So if it's an HR solution, tell me a little bit about the company's HR team or some of their practices.
Mhm.
I'd want to be like a little bit more specific, I think.
Okay.
I don't think I would let it spit out the 5-page pitch for me without me giving it quite a bit of content up front. Like, here's
Okay.
my base pitch, and what are the areas, knowing what you know about this company, what are the areas I should talk more about? Are there areas you think are missing? I would work side by side with it as if it were a colleague that knows more than I do about the other company, and continue to iterate on your pitch using it. But I wouldn't just do a one and done and spit it in and expect it to give me the right thing, because by actually using it as a companion and a thought partner,
Yeah.
you'll learn more about that company in the process, so that when you show up to give the pitch, you'll have a little more depth than you would if you just took the presentation without doing some of the idea generation.
Beautiful. Okay. So what I'm hearing is absolutely use it as a research partner, but do not use it as the tool to draft the whole thing. Keep your
Right.
language, your authenticity in there. Okay. All right. Um, let's go to this third one, which may or may not be loosely related to true events. Um, I am an employee in marketing, and I have trained up an enterprise GPT to speak in our language, to speak in our tone, to speak with the right brand. I've fed it a number of my emails, so it understands me in addition to my company's tone and style. And I just feel like I've reached a point where every email I receive, I'm able to get a pretty solid draft of the response, or even emails that I'm to write. I get a pretty solid draft. And so I've reduced my email writing time by 90%. Am I okay to keep doing that?
Let me ask you this. Are you reviewing the content before you send it out, or are you at the point where you're just letting it fly without your review?
There are some that are flying without review, which are pretty straightforward. And then there are some that I am reviewing, but I am not writing anything by hand anymore.
I think if you're in a role where I'm thinking about, for instance, like our customer support team or
Yep.
our sales team, where you're maybe answering a lot of exactly the same questions over and over again, then I think that's the right use case where you would let it do it. But I think you'd also want to train it to look for keywords that might be either debatable or create concern or have like legal implications. Um, so I'm not opposed to you using it without oversight for certain emails, but I think you'd wanna make sure, and maybe you would give it a period of time, where you would say, "Hey, if you haven't seen this email written almost precisely like this before, like, I wanna review it." So I think I'm in the middle on this one, actually. I think
Okay.
there's a use case for it where you could let it fly without your oversight if it's an area where you're getting a lot of the same questions. Um, and I think like a sales, customer service role would feel like that would be an area where you could do that.
Yeah.
But I think when there's a discretionary decision that needs to be made, or there's something that isn't standard that actually needs a little more thought put behind it, that I would
Yeah.
want those flagged. It might be okay if it's drafting an idea for you, but I think you should still review it before it goes out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what I'm hearing is if it's relatively repeatable, I think it's okay for it to draft and for you to do a very quick spin and send, or even send if it's the repeated question for a customer care. But if there's anything that requires a little bit more discretion or judgment, then even if you get the draft, do read it.
I think
Okay.
so. I think that's the right in between.
Okay. One last one. Um, I'm a creative. I build and I take a lot of pride in my art. I always have. And I'm never going to use AI, no matter what. This is my sovereignty. This is my identity. I'm never going to use AI. Should I keep going?
I guess I would challenge the artist on that, in that I think that AI can be a really great thought partner, and sometimes for very creative situations where I'm thinking of an example where I might be designing, let's say I'm in a multimedia, I'm doing some kind of design work and I have a vision. Um, and maybe I need a thought partner to think through. Maybe it could be even more expansive or better than I thought. I think
Yeah.
using AI as a partner is a good idea. Or I can also imagine as an artist, you get stuck. You have a kind of an idea for where you want to go with something, or I'm a writer and I'm looking at different endings to my story. I think it's just a really good thought partner, and I don't not suggesting that you would use the A, it may return some great ideas for you, but B, I find that sometimes when you're going back and forth with AI, it can actually spark some ideas for you. It'll help you think
Um,
about things you haven't considered. I think you could continue to be very successful as an artist without it, but
yeah.
I wonder if you're trying to push yourself into a different style or you wanna break free of doing the same thing. I think it could be interesting to use AI.
Okay. So similar, I think there's a pattern emerging, Lynn, from all of your coaching that, don't lose the authenticity, but if there's a little bit of help you can get on research or ideation or just being a thought partner, there's no harm. But things that are a little bit more deep, strategic, creative should be human first with some research help. And things that are a little bit more tactical, busy work, more administrative. It's okay for AI to take a first pass and for you to just say, I'll be the human in the loop to say yes or no. Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, I think anything, yes, anything where it's, more of a standard response that you're looking for, or data analysis where you're then gonna take it and make a decision off that data. Yeah, I'm a big fan of using it and just recognizing where your inner voice carries enough weight that it should be, you shouldn't just rely on AI.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Perfect. Beautiful. I think the beauty of this conversation, Len, is so much of how we think about AI, right? Like, what is our personal mindset towards AI? That is it just something that's going to do my work for me, or is it a thought partner? Is it a sparring partner? Our mindset is what determines how authentic we'll show up when we are leveraging AI, but not giving up our sovereignty. So, on that note, I want to actually switch gears a little bit and really talk about the dance between adoption and authenticity, right? Because the way people adopt AI uh, builds its first relationship with AI. Like, am I being forced to adopt or am I being encouraged to adopt? It builds my first relationship with AI. And that then sort of translates a little bit into how will I think about it? And will I just dump things on it? Will I over rely on it? Will I under rely on it? Will I guard it? Or will I find the right authentic balance between AI and me? So I do want you to share the story of how you rolled out AI in your organization. It's just one of the most inspiring stories of scaled adoption. So over to you.
Well, thank you. We've taken I guess I'll say an interesting approach at UrbanSitter in that, unlike some companies where you're getting sort of AI mandate use from the top down, we feel that we like to hire curious, engaged employees. And in this case, we felt like we were all learning at the same time, and different people have different interests, and different departments have different tools they need. And so we've really leaned into the curiosity, and we've given our employees a budget to spend on AI. Clearly, we have like a security component where what they use is reviewed and we make sure it's okay for our company. We have some policies in place, but for the most part, we've decided that our team members are probably the best to figure out what's going to work for them, and then that really
Beautiful.
can scale company wide if we share those learnings. So we do demo days where people will come and demo what they're doing, and it could be everything from the marketing person doing an analysis on SEM spend and looking at campaigns over 10 years and having AI help to determine what campaigns we should be running and what we should eliminate, things like that. It could be a designer coming in and showing how AI has revised part of our product flow. It could be engineering
Amazing.
coming in and showing us how they've become much more efficient. And then people bring in personal examples too of how they're using it, whether it's me using it to plan my kids' college tours, or people using it for budgeting purposes. But what it's done is it's created this, and oh, and by the way, and people share failed scenarios too, which I think is really key.
Wow.
Where, hey, I tried to use this. I'll just like use Claude as an example. I put all of my emails in Claude and I tried to have it replicate my voice, and look at how it backfired. And I made that up. It's not any
Yeah.
reflection of Claude. But we try to be really candid about our experiences, and then people will say, oh, hey, I want to try that tool. Or we've also created company, now we've kind of evolved that to have like company wide tools that we can use that already have our voice and brand in there, or our goals. But it all kind of starts from employee curiosity, because each department does things differently, and each person, um I find like with AI, I think if you ask people, oftentimes the tool that the use case for AI that they like the most is when it solves for the part of their job they like the least. And
Yeah.
so oftentimes people sort of self-select what they're using it for, but then other people will say, oh yeah, I hate, or I hate, that's not a good word to use, but I don't like doing that either. Like, it's amazing that it can do that analysis for me in the background.
Yeah.
um and having everybody share just feels like we're on the journey together. And
Yeah.
it's definitely a company initiative, but
Yeah.
I would say that the way we've approached it is, rather than taking a tops down approach, it's sort of more of a bottoms up. And then as things surface that we see lots of use case for, then we'll pull it into the way we work, either across the whole department or across the whole company.
Got it. So, Lynn, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that approach of, I think there's a lot of advances in the technology side of AI, but I think your story is a massive advance on the human side of AI and
Oh,
human
thank
AI
you.
collaboration. Because I mean, you're building trust and you're building vulnerability and you're bringing change management along as the AI is advancing, which I find so inspiring. Can I break this down? I'm a consultant, you can't help it, but I have to break things down into phases. So it sounds like you started out with a little bit of an initial infusion to say, everybody go experiment. That
Right.
was step one. And then step two became the demo days or brown bags or whenever people were coming back and sharing. And then step three was a little bit of feedback loop around what they saw, what everybody saw in the demo, and which one might actually benefit everybody. And then step four is basically then a few scaled use cases. Am I
Yeah, like wider
understanding?
scale adoption, absolutely. And I would say there was a piece between the demo day and further utilization where there was like a bit of a training as well. So the people
Yeah,
who would come and demo something oftentimes will get follow-up questions. Hey, I'm trying to figure out how to do this. Do you think it would work? So it also creates a lot of collaboration, which I think is really neat.
yeah.
And so yeah, I would say it's sort of been self-experiment, share, a little bit wider adoption, kind of hone in on what the right way is to scale it, and then it sort of takes flight.
Beautiful. And Lynn, where in this whole journey were you starting to measure, whether it's growth or its efficiency or its quality? Where are you measuring the actual outcome that AI is producing?
I mean, it's everywhere. So it's in terms of like individual productivity would be one way to look at it, but other things because of the type of business we have, we would also look at on the marketing side, has our cost to acquire a customer gone down? Have the product improvements that we're using through AI, have we seen better conversion? So we use it to not just look at actual productivity of our team, which is still a big one, but actually looking at it and saying, okay, is it bringing down our cost to acquire customers? Is it making our engineering team able to produce, X amount instead of Y amount every quarter? So we're looking at it, we're using different measures depending on like the department, but also across the company.
Got it. And are you codifying any behaviors or organizational habits or cultural things to make sure that humans and AI collaborate in the most meaningful way?
Yes, definitely. And I would say in one of the areas where um, because we have so much valuable data about
Yeah,
families, their location, their kids' age, like there are certain things for us that we have to codify that are kind of like non-starters because the data
of
that we
course.
sit on, it's not HIPAA data, but it's maybe one step shy of that, right? It's personal
Close, very
information.
close. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've had to codify both policies around how we won't use it, but then we've also pulled in on the positive side. Okay, great. If you're going to use it for this type of analysis, or you're going to use it for this type of, vibe coding, whatever it is, here's sort of like some basic steps that we follow. And we've done things where for instance, on the content side, since multiple people in the company write content, we now have one source that has our voice and our body really
Mhm.
embedded in it, and so we tend to use that more. But
Very
um,
fantastic.
yeah, I would say we codify things when we're seeing a lot of success with them, and then we codify things where we think there's risk. And then in that in between zone, there's still sort of trial and error.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. I'm just looking at the clock and I know we're almost out of time, but I have one last question because we
Okay.
talked so much about authenticity in so many different scenarios. Um, what is one thing, Lynn, that you're doing personally to remain authentically Lynn in the age of AI?
Okay. Well, this is one that the people at my company and I think my friends would get, but maybe it's going to sound strange. I'm really big about sharing when things with AI don't go well. I'm sort of that person who likes to share the
Great one.
yeah. And it's been fun. Like, so for instance, I mentioned the example of using it for college tours. So I did last spring use it to plan college tours for my kids. And in some ways it was amazing, but in other ways I found flaws where, oh no, that school doesn't even offer tours. So, trial and error. I like to share the snafus as much as I share the
Yes.
successes, and
Yes.
that's been good.
That's amazing. I love that one. I do think that we have to normalize that. Thank you for saying it. And, we're going to blast this recording, and many, many people will hear it. But thank you for saying it, because I do think it's so important to normalize that there are things that AI does get wrong, and we talk about it. And so it just allows another person to know that, okay, that this is a scenario where it may or may not work.
And
So
then going back, and then the thing that's so amazing about AI right now, because things are changing so quickly, some of the issues I've run into. So, for instance, like even 6 months ago, so 8 months ago, I was doing a big analysis on like a massive data set that also pulled in some public information, and it kind of was, I'll just say, use the word spinning for a better word. It
mm,
wasn't quite getting what
uh,
it needed, and then rather than just say like, oh, it doesn't work for that, I tried it again like a month later, and at that point the products had already evolved so much that then it was
yeah,
successful. So I think
right.
AI is really interesting because what doesn't work today could literally work tomorrow, which is what's kind
Tomorrow,
of
yeah.
exciting about it.
Or on a different platform. No, I hear you. Completely hear you. So I think maybe the takeaway there is talking about both the good and the bad, and not writing off anything forever, but just keeping channels of communication open on, this is what I'm seeing and what are you seeing, so that I save you the loss of authenticity. Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Lynn. This
Oh,
was
thank
such
you.
a great conversation. And I think that authenticity is not going to go out of style anytime soon, with or without AI. And I think you're a living proof of that. So appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
And that's a wrap. What were the AI-isms that you collected from this episode? The two that'll remain with me: one is imperfect human things is definitely greater than AI generated polish. The second thing is there is a real danger that a gap could get created between who we think we are and who AI tells us we are. Let's not let that gap get created, and certainly let's not let that gap become really big. This is AI-isms, human rhythms in a synthetic world. I'll see you next time.